Good morning and welcome here in our group Complex PTSD and Thriving. Today our topic is actually on thriving. So how do we differentiate between feeling or acting from a place of victimhood versus survivor, being a survivor compared to what a thriver actually is? Because this keeps coming up and I just want to share some of the tips that I learned along the way to help me distinguish between them. Okay, so this might be a little bit blunt today or perhaps confronting, but I want to highlight this, that I'm not picking on any particular person here or any situation. It's just in general from my experience. I went through this. I go from victimhood, survivorhood to thriverhood, and going back and forth there, but it's about catching ourselves when we're in certain, whichever one we are. Yeah. So let me just quickly check. I am not actually sure if this is working today because everything is shaded out. Let me just quickly make sure that I'm actually live, that this is working. If you're here live with me, then please let me. It looks like it's up. So sorry. That's sidetracked. So, but if you are anywhere in, whether you're stuck in feeling as surviving, when we're surviving, it's almost like we're just barely existing, right? It's like you don't really get to enjoy life. You're not fully feeling, all the good stuff. We want to have all the feelings, not just, surviving is often with lots of numbness. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. But regardless of where you're at on that state, okay, sometimes I hear people say things like, I am too broken, things are just not working for me. Or perhaps we're comparing. You ever done that? I'm so guilty of that one. I was jealous of other people who were doing better, and sometimes we all might have thoughts either that, hey, I'm perhaps too broken, that's why it's not working for me, or perhaps their PTSD is not as bad, or their trauma is not as bad. But I've been running groups like this for over 5 years now, and I personally attended workshops for my own healing for a few decades. And what I learned is, or the people that I met, it's not true, that they're unhelpful thoughts that my brain produces, because there are people who have been in jail, I've met people who've been heroin addicts, and I've met people who've been through the most horrific traumas, perhaps like you, okay? Yeah, they managed to shift their life around. They got out of this victimhood and survivorhood, and they're thriving. They managed to do that. And I got really curious, what is different about them? How did they manage to do that? Okay. And the thing is, it doesn't happen when you finally find that perfect therapist for you, or the perfect approach. It's not that. Just in case you're thinking you're stuck because you just can't find a therapist, or it's too expensive for you, or your country just whatever, all these kind of thoughts that we're having, they're not actually helpful. Okay, so let me just quickly share with you how you can actually figure out in which state you are, so you can catch yourself in the moment. Okay, because if you have thoughts like people always take advantage of me, people are preying on me, people try to get me to do stuff, things always go bad for me, those kind of thoughts, they're victimhood thoughts. Okay? They are from our childhood when we felt helpless and hopeless. Okay? They're those kind of thoughts. Or if you're more like having thoughts of, I gotta work really hard, I gotta do all these things for my friends, or I gotta do all these things at work, this hustlers, this frantic busyness, or people pleasing, that workaholic. That's kind of more the survival mode, or the defensiveness, or even if you feel like on Facebook you need to protect other people and things like that. That is a place, that's surviving, okay? So to be either victimhood or survivor. So they're the kind of thoughts we're having in those in those kind of states. So you want to catch them. Okay, once we become aware of them, we know, oh, this is what's happening. Okay, because we're going backwards. We're acting from a childlike, I don't know about childlike, from the trauma brain. Okay, or some people like to say the lower self or the child self, or compared to your higher self, your ideal self, your future self, or all these kind of. So if you compare the two, and the easiest way ever to distinguish whether you are actually acting from your higher self, or whether you're acting from a place where you're thriving and feeling good, is that one question that a mentor shared with me over a decade ago, but that's helped me so much, is to ask yourself, am I acting from a place of fear, or am I acting from a place of love? And this makes a clear cut between the two, because survivorhood and victimhood, we are acting out of fear. We're trying to protect ourselves, we're protecting other people, that we're not feeling safe in our body, in the situation. It's always out of fear, okay? Not out of love. Does that make sense? So this is the easiest way to recognize the two. But also when we're in a struggle, we're thinking differently. It's like, oh, yes, I made a mistake. It's okay. I'm still an okay person. I made a mistake. That's okay. Let me look at this. What went wrong? What can I do different next time? And then let it go. Okay. I have thoughts that I can figure things out, and believing in myself, accepting myself. When things come up, when I catch myself going into acting out of a place of fear, then it's like, okay, really talking to my younger self there, because I know I drifted off. I made it in a trauma brain or childlike, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it my inner child. So I did a lot of inner child work for myself. So I really hold that space for her. Oh, yes, I got it. You got scared. Let's have a look at it. I am here for you. Bring it back in. I'm my adult self now. I am here. And I can protect my inner child. Okay, so that the responses always come from childhood, those fear responses. But now in my adult life, I can give that child that love and nurturing and care and anything. But it's got to come from me. No one else can do that for me. Not your therapist, not your partner, not your best friend. It's got to come from you. Okay? So that's why that shift, getting out of that getting from surviving to thriving, does not depend on you finding that perfect therapist. You can start working now. The reason my life changed isn't because I had a great therapist, because when you look at it, you only see your therapist, if you're lucky, once a week for an hour. Okay, the rest of the time you have to do yourself to get your brain to change their thinking patterns, to getting out of that victimhood thinking into more of a thriver way of thinking. That's daily stuff. Daily routines, your daily habits that you need to put in place, the practices, and a lot of this is shared for you freely online. There's so many videos here in this Facebook group. There's videos I did on my website. There's the YouTube channel. I shared so many of the practices and tools that I do. It's the reason I got where I am is because I really do them every single day. Okay, so I have that rule. Every time I watch a video or read a book, there's got to be something that I will try out of this. One thing I'm going to implement, and I'm going to try for at least 3 months and see what that does for me. How does that change my situation? How does it make me feel differently? How does it make me behave differently? Because the way we think and feel about something determines how we're going to act. Okay, if we feel like, oh, everyone's taking advantage of me and I'm feeling really scared, that's going to affect the way I'm going to act. Most of the time when I think like this, I don't act at all. And then I have secondary feelings on this. I feel really shame and guilt and embarrassed about myself, and that spiral that we get into. But if I start to think differently about myself and giving myself permission to make mistakes, knowing that this is human, I'm having my own back, I'm my own best friend, then I'm likely to take different actions. I'm okay with stepping outside of my comfort zone, because I know if I make a mistake, I'm still going to love myself. I'm still going to be there for myself. I'm not going to abandon myself. I'm going to feel different about myself. I feel proud that I've had the courage to try new things and things like that. Can you see how the minute you change some of the thoughts, or get aware of them, you can kind of you're more likely to change into different thought patterns or feelings that help you to take different kind of actions. Okay, because our trauma brain is automatic. It just scans the environment constantly for danger. It's so hard to switch out of this. And one of the practices I did there is the thinking of things I'm grateful for. Every time I'm in the line, that was my trigger. Whether I'm in the line for my coffee, or whether I'm queuing up somewhere at the bus stop, or whether I am at the traffic light and it's red, every time I had to wait somewhere, I'm going to my head, what am I grateful for and what am I appreciative of? And initially, I couldn't come up with anything. Seriously, my brain could not come up with anything. It was so busy scanning for all the things that are wrong in my life, what are wrong about me, and what is dangerous. It was so, that pattern was so deeply ingrained. It took a real long time for me to get out of there and start seeing the things that are actually beautiful in my life. You know, create those new kind of patterns. And this was because I did this multiple times a day. Every opportunity I had, I focused on those things. Okay, so it's those kind of little things that actually, even though they might sound like nothing, but they actually have a big impact on your healing. And you don't need to have the perfect therapist for that. So you can start that today. Okay, any of those activities, or any practices that you ever seen on any video or some people share with you, if you implement them, it's the start. You start to rewire your brain there. Okay, so I don't think I can see any questions here today. It's Facebook. Not sure if you guys have questions, but I always go back afterwards to check anyway. But so let me check my notes to make sure I got that. So yeah, so that move from out of the victimhood or survivor state, you know, where we just kind of barely exist, to thriving doesn't happen by accident. It's those little things you do for yourself every single day. You know, that the sparks, the glimmers of compassion or kindness that you point to yourself, all of that, it counts. It counts. It counts more perhaps than even your therapy sessions, because you only have them, you know, every week or every other week for an hour. Yeah. Okay, so I hope you find that useful, and remember, yeah, the biggest question for me was always to ask myself, is this out of fear or is this out of love? And that always helped me to realize, am I sliding back into that more my younger self, you know, my inner child's getting really powerful here, and I need some of my attention, and I need to listen, or am I actually making good decisions for myself there? So thank you, and as always, sending you lots and lots of love and rainbows to brighten up the tough times just a little. See you guys.